The markets at the moment really struggling to gain upward traction, and yesterday I'm sure investors breathing some kind of relief as a sign of hope filtered through. But what kind of trigger are you expecting from your perspective to actually trigger a sustainable upturn on this market?
Thank you very much, Alishia. I think, like you point out, the market does appear to be looking for direction at the moment. I think what the dominant theme in the market seems to be, now that the general gloom has lifted with a more general positive investor sentiment surrounding the whole market, we are seeing investors paying greater attention to counter-specific information. So in terms of a trigger, it really will have to be fundamentally good results from a particular company. And what we've seen of late is a mixed bag of results. So where counters have reported positive results, we are seeing investors rewarding those counters with increased interest. But where, like with East African cables, you see a blip in the performance of the company, you are then seeing a little bit of uncertainty. So I think the trigger, in a perhaps fundamental way, will be better performance by the companies being viewed by investors.
Well, we've had quite a few companies making news yesterday. We saw Total Kenya out with the half-year numbers. That company seeing a surge in pre-tax profit. And when I say surge, I mean a big surge, up 772%. Somewhat distorted, though, because this does take into account some of the sales volumes achieved following its buyout of Chevron Kenya, right?
Indeed, that's very true. There are a few counters on the market that have appeared to struggle with organic growth, and Total Kenya is one of them. So with the acquisition of the assets of Chevron Kenya under the brand name Caltex locally, we have finally seen them be able to break out of their previous profit cycle, which was a profitable one, but a fairly flat and unexciting one. So we would now expect the market to perhaps price in these new expectations for the counter, and it may break out of its price range, which has been about 30 Kenya shillings for a very long time. So at least it is new information on that counter.
So off this current new base, I mean, what kind of earnings growth should we be expecting to see moving forward? Because certainly management is optimistic about its second half performance as well.
Management is fairly optimistic, but one thing we have seen, the local oil marketing environment is a fairly fixed one. So while there will have been a huge jump following the acquisition, I would expect going forward you would see a slightly more muted development. We aren't expecting to see any supernormal gains going forward. So I think things will settle a bit. So what should be interesting to see is what the market prices in the new profit expectations for in the short term. But I think in the medium to long term, you will once again see the whole environment settle once again.
Well, interesting things happening in the oil space as a whole. We've had Tullow Oil buying 50% stakes in 6 exploration licenses in Kenya and Ethiopia as the hunt for oil sources in East Africa gathers steam. So more and more players becoming involved in more than just the downstream space, right?
That is true, but it's important to note that the most recent development is only another chapter in what is becoming a rather long story of oil exploration in Kenya. We have had a few false alarms, a few people shouting wolf, and I think really now people are much more calm in their expectations. What I think we will do and hope is that when the time comes, and I think we all hope that time does come, when we do find exploitable assets that we can look into, that we would be able to handle them maybe slightly better than our neighbors seem to be doing at the moment, and avoid the bickering and political intrigues that sometimes attract such discoveries.
How do you see the heightened exploration changing the playing field? Because it comes at a time when many of the multinationals that did operate in Kenya have chosen to pull out of the downstream space in the region simply because margins were too low, and focus instead on the the upstream side of things. So how does that influence a player like Total Kenya?
I think we've always said that the players like Total Kenya, Kenol Kobil that have kept faith with this market should be borne out in the long term. I think the opportunity to go upstream and to actually discover deposits in parts of Kenya offers a new opportunity to new players. But I think the people who have pulled out would find it quite difficult to win the confidence of government in particular if they were to come back in. So I think going forward, you will find that the companies that have kept faith with the market would be ahead in the race, if you like, to benefit from the new opportunities that arise. But like I said, with Kenya's experience, even with exploration for things like titanium down at the coast, you will find expectations will be fairly dim until there is actual proof that we are likely to find these deposits.
In the meantime, we're hearing that a slowdown's looming, or a showdown rather, is looming between the Aviation and Allied Workers Union and Kenya Airways, as workers over on that end plan on downing tools next week, Tuesday. What exactly is unfolding there, and do you see Kenya Airways bearing the brunt of that looming development when it comes to its share price?
I think with Kenya Airways and the possibility of a workers' strike, I think there was a slight reprieve yesterday. We saw the workers indicate that they were willing to negotiate once again, but the moment they raise a strike flag, it always does send shivers down the spines of most investors. But I think the difference this time is that Kenya Airways was here not very long ago. Just under 2 years ago, they experienced a strike. It did impact their performance, but I think the fact that it has happened so recently in the past should inform investors going forward. And I think you will find that the reaction this time would not be as great, and we would hope that they would be able to benefit from the experience the last time round to ensure that it wasn't very long-lived. So I think you will find that the ripples it will create will be fewer, if any.